There are over 100 bundles in Valorant, and to their credit, most of them are pretty cool. But what are the best ones? That is the question we intend to find out today. Now, we could be super lame and try to figure out which one's the best by judging them by their variant option, by their finisher, by the sounds they make. We could do this the old-fashioned boring way, or we could do this the cool way, using totally accurate battle simulator to have them fight in an epic tournament to see which one of them is truly worthy of the title Best Valorant Bundle. Here's how this is going to work. We are going to have 92 Valorant bundles fighting. That is all the bundles excluding any of the limited time ones and any of the ones that don't have any gun skins. I then took all of these bundles and assigned each of them a champion in totally accurate battle simulator using an advanced algorithm to make sure that we got the most fair tournament possible. If you don't know what tabs is, it's real simple. All you do, you put down a bunch of soldiers on each side and they fight each other. So you can, even if you don't know what the game is, you'll follow along just fine. Anyways, let's not waste any more time. Let's just jump right into it. So kicking off our tournament, we have the epic battle between Doodlebud Musketmen and Elder Flame Quick Draws. The battle started off pretty poorly for the Quick Draws. They all got shot pretty quickly. They swerved out of the way the best they could, but turns out more gun equals more win. Kicking off our next round, we have Aristocrat Wizards and Gaia's Vengeance 2 Ice Archers. The Wizards tried their best. They got a few of the archers with their lightning bolts. However, it wasn't enough, and eventually, the Ice Archers had shot enough arrows that the Wizards were frozen and they couldn't move forward any further, so the Archers win this one-handedly. Moving forward, we have the Sovereign Dragons versus the Minima Void Cultists. The Void Cultists tried to show these dragons how to fly, however, the dragons were unappreciative and burnt them alive. Didn't go so well for the cultists. Dragons take this one. Coming up, a challenge to see which of these undeads more dead. We have the Sentinels of Light 2 Vampires versus the Infantry Skeleton Warrior. As Dracula once said, bleh. Anyways, the vampires win. Next up, we have the Neptune Hawachas and the Sylvanas Chiefs. To say this started out poorly for the chieftains would be an understatement. They lost half their troops like 30 seconds in, they were all gone. But they kept pushing forward, and it came down to the wire. One lone chieftain versus one lone Hawacha, and at the very end, he got close enough, and he finished the job to clutch the victory for the chieftains. Next up, we have the epic battle of the Spectra Jarls and the Lux Samurai. So, there were way more samurai than there were Jarls. However, that didn't stop the Jarls taking an early advantage using their ice powers to basically clear the field. This terrified the samurai, and there was one that managed to get away for a little bit and tried to hide behind this tree. However, it wasn't enough, and he got punted across the field. Next round, we have the epic battle of the Spline Farmers and the Magepunk 2 Harpooners. The farmers outnumbered the harpooners about 10 to 1. There was a small army of farmers charging in. However, the harpooners just kept pulling the farmers closer with the harpoon guns and throwing them backwards. The farmers never even got close to defeating them. It was a massacre. Next on our list, we have the Integrate Swordcasters and the Altitude Halflings. Not even gonna lie, these swordcasters got jumped. They had no idea what was coming for them. They were just, it was nightmarish to say the least. Not only did they lose the tournament so early, but they also win the trophy for worst haircut, so been embarrassing. Moving on, we have the Recon Boxers and the Smite Mad Mechanics. Say what you will about these mechanics, but they take a punch better than anyone else I've ever seen. They stood their ground and they used whatever they're using, I don't know. Either way, they won this one pretty well. Next up on our list, we have the Prism Cannons and the Nebula Monks. Now, these monks are not the most peaceful kind, but, you know, no matter how skilled they may be with these staffs, there's one thing they can't beat, and that's giant iron balls flying in their face. They did not stand a chance. Our next epic matchup, we have Primordium Hoplites versus Team Ace Thor. Now, even though these guys are going up against a literal god, I'm not going to count them out just yet. Oh, it's over. Well, they tried their best. Next up, we have Galleria Demonetization Thrower versus Neo Frontier Sacred Elephant. Now, I'm not supposed to pick favorites in this tournament, but I'm just gonna say the Neo Frontier bundle is the best bundle in this entire game, and that's probably why these elephants took these explosives like a champ, because they have the power of the best bundle on their side. Coming up with a very spooky round, we have Equilibrium Reaper versus Oni Barrel Roller. Now, I know what you're thinking. There's no way it's gonna be that easy, right? The Grim Reaper might struggle against these barrels. What are you thinking? Why would you think that? It's a dumb idea. The barrels they got destroyed. The Overdrive Celestial Ages versus MK7 Tempest Liches. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't know if my grand idea to win a battle is to run into the lightning. But, you know, these Ages, they had their own idea. So, the Lich takes this one. We got a real epic match here. We have Soul Strife Bards versus Oni 2.0 Tanks. So, the Bards had a very noble strategy of trying to use music to disarm the tanks. However, explosives trump music every time, it turns out. Bit of a tragedy, but it is what it is. Prime time match coming up. We got Prime 2.0 Stoners and Prime Sarissas. While we watch this, let me ask you a question. What do you think is better? A pointy stick, a really long stick, or rocks? Personally, I would have thought the pointy sticks would be better. However, reality is often disappointing. Rocks win every time. We got another crazy one here. We got Valiant Hero Skeleton Archers versus Mage Punk Minotaurs. Skeleton Archers probably would have done a bit better if they had some distance. However, the Minotaur charged right into their ranks and immediately pummeled all of them. None of them stood a chance. Minotaur easily clears. Bit of a crazy one here. We got Radiant Entertainment System Monkey Kings versus Horizon Captains. I'm not too worried about this one. Monkey King is one of my favorite units in this game. The Radiant Entertainment System, one of the best skin bundles. This should be a cakewalk. I mean, Horizon Captains. I mean, what are the odds? Wait, Captains won. What? He looks just as surprised as I am. Following that tragic round, we've got Reverie Poachers and Black Market Pikemen. This should be an interesting one. I mean, I don't really... Oh, it's over. And well, moving on. Alright, next up, we've got Sensation Pirate Queen versus Winter Wonderland Kings. Alright, a king and queen match. Alright, you can't make this stuff up. And for real, I didn't set up any of these matches. I just spun the wheel and it chose for me. So I think this is perfect. Either way, this match was actually pretty close. The king and queen are pretty evenly matched in terms of power, except the queen just has explosives, which ended up sealing the deal. So, you know, when you go to a sword fight, bring bombs. Who would have thought? Following that round, we've got the Blast X Chariots and the Sentinels of Light Spear Throwers. The horse, while being the greatest invention of the medieval century, turns out is no match for pointy wooden stick. Who would have thought? But you know, they really gave it their best try. Alright, next up, we've got the Kurunami Mammoths versus the Glitch Pop Longships. The Mammoths came out swinging, destroyed their ships. It looked like a massacre. I didn't think the Longships were ever going to be able to recover from this. Yeah, it was bad, except for one man, one brave individual who poked one mammoth one too many times, and it won. They somehow won. With a very special match coming up, we have Gaia's Vengeance Divine Arbiters versus Radiant Crisis Deadeyes. These Divine Arbiters had an interesting strategy of getting shot and then doing damage. Very interesting, not very effective. Deadeyes win. Got a crazy match coming up. We got Forsaken Jousters versus RGX2 Flint Knox. If this tournament has taught me anything, it's that the horse is the most overrated invention ever. I don't know what was happening, but you know what also was overrated? Guns, apparently, because pointy stick always wins. It's incredible. Next up, we've got Tethered Realms Blunderbuss versus Ruination Halberd. Alright, so I know what I just said last round about the gun versus pointy sticks. Well, negate everything I said. Turns out, gun, best invention. Another spooky one coming up. We've got Abyssal Pumpkin Catapults versus Wasteland Deathbringers. Now, if it was me personally, I don't know if chucking pumpkins is necessarily the most effective strategy, but what do I know? All I know is Deathbringers cleared easy. Next up, we have Crimson Beast Radiant Glaives versus Undercity Harvesters. You know, honestly, it wasn't until after I started recording all of this I realized how dumb the names are for some of these units. And honestly, I'm just glad the Harvester won just to get rid of these guys. Radiant Glaives, what even is that? Next up, we've got Sarman Funny Stick Throwers versus Reaver Blow Darts. Now, I always thought the trick with dynamite is that you're supposed to throw it away from yourself, but apparently I'm not as educated as I would have thought. But the blow darts took this one quite easily. Coming back, we've got Doodlebud Musketmen versus Celestial Pharaohs. Now, the Pharaohs had this interesting strategy of summoning a circle of light. However, it didn't do anything once they were all shot. Incredible. What can you do? Next up, we've got the Valorant Go Volume 2 Potion Sellers versus Zero Fang Painters. A true underdog of this tournament, I did not think these painters would do so well. Not only did they tank my frame rate, but they actually managed to win this round. It looks like they were trying to defend their jobs from AI art, and they were fighting for their livelihood. Next up, we've got Luna Brawlers versus Gaia Vengeance 2 Ice Archers. Unfortunately for the Ice Archers, these Berserkers did not go down nearly as easily as the Wizards. As a matter of fact, once they blocked the arrows with their shields, it turns out an axe is way stronger than a bow and arrow. This one's gonna go kind of crazy. We've got Singularity Da Vinci tanks versus Sovereign Dragons. I mean, if these tanks were designed by Da Vinci himself, surely they'll do some damage, right? Oh, turns out they don't do so well against fire. Crazy match right here. We got Sentinels of Light 2 Vampires versus Titan Male Hay Balers. What? After a quick Wikipedia search, vampires don't seem to have any weakness to hay. So I don't really know what they were thinking here. But, you know, the hay bales, they tried their best, I guess. But turns out blood-sucking vampires is just too much. Coming back for a second round, we got the Sylvanas Chiefs versus the No Limit Miners. There is truly no limit to what these miners would do in order to get back home after a long day's work. Even if that means beating up a bunch of chiefs in the field, they certainly, they didn't stand a chance. Coming up next, we got the Spectrum Jarls versus the Chrome Deck Valkyries. This might have been the most epic battle we've seen on this tournament so far. It felt like I was literally in Valhalla as this was happening. A Norse mythology epic clash. It was unfathomable. I can't even speak. That's how crazy it was. But it turns out the Jarls won easily, so what can you do? Well, look who's back. We've got the Mage Punk 2 Harpooners, and we've got the
Nunca Olvidados
Healers. The Healers took a very interesting approach, being that they would just heal themselves and did not attack the Harpooners at all. And the Harpooners just picked them off like fish in a barrel, so this was a pretty easy match for the Harpooners. Next up, we've got the Altitude Halflings and the Sakura Scarecrows. Let me ask you a hypothetical question. If you were a bird, what would you be more scared of? A straw man just standing there by himself, or a small army of half people? Well, I think that's a pretty obvious answer, and the Halflings won this easily. This one's a real doozy. We've got the RGX Pro Ninjas versus the Orion Balloon Archers. Now, ninjas are obviously supposed to be stealthy, but let me ask you something, viewer. How are you supposed to be stealthy if you're attached to a balloon and flying away? My point exactly. We got a crazy one here. We got the Smite Mad Mechanics versus the Chronovoid Shadow Walkers. Now, even though these Mad Mechanics were able to take punches really well, it does not mean they were able to take swords very well, so the Shadow Walkers won this one. A real long-range doozy here. We've got Imperium Ballistas versus Prism Cannons. This might be the most epic long-range battle we've ever seen. At first, the Ballistas took out a majority of the cannons. It was crazy. It was absolutely wild. Then the cannons came up. They were like, eat iron. And they did. The Ballistas did, and the cannons won. It was crazy. A real godly match coming up here. We've got Ion Zeus versus Team Ace Thor. Real clash of the gods going on here. It was epic. Lightning was everywhere. There was punching, there was flying, crying, there was dying, you name it, it was there. And eventually Thor knocks Zeus halfway across the map and he won. Norse mythology better than Greek mythology, it's settled. Moving forward, we've got the Cryostasis Paladins versus the Neo Frontier Sacred Elephants. If you should take anything away from this video, viewer, let me tell you is that you should never underestimate the power of an elephant. Beats Glowing Hammer and whatever else these guys were doing. Point is, Elephant crushed these guys easy. Alright, who's next? We've got Ion 2.0 Cactus versus Equilibrium Reaper. I went into this match thinking I knew exactly how it would go, but I started to think, maybe this is it. Maybe the one thing that could stop the Grim Reaper was a cactus. And then I immediately realized that was a dumb idea. Grim Reaper wins. Next up, we've got MK7 Liberty Tempest Lich versus the Snowfall Berserker. Unlike our last opponents, when the Berserkers decided to jump into the lightning, they had a plan, which was to just keep swinging and hope it worked out. And it did. The Berserkers won this round. Next up, we've got the Oni 2.0 tanks versus the Avalanche Gunslinger. The tanks did really well last time, but unfortunately they ran into a problem with the Gunslingers, being that they actually fought back. And at that point, the Gunslingers won the round pretty easily. Another interesting matchup, we've got the Rush Catapults versus the Valorant Go Bone Mages. Now, I have to give the Bone Mages credit here. They charged at the catapult without any fear. And you know, if they had gotten any closer, maybe this would have ended differently. However, it turns out they were not able to defeat the Flying Rocks, and this last guy got the worst of it. Next up, we've got the Prime 2.0 Stoners and the Questionable Knife Bundle Exiled Sentinels. You know, I wanted to believe in my heart that the Stoners had a chance here, that they could somehow find a way to defeat these people with shields and axes, but it turns out when all you have is a rock, you're kind of limited to what you can do. Moving up in the world, we've got the Mage Punk Minotaurs versus the Protocol Peasants. You know, peasants, they did some damage, I guess. I mean, maybe, I don't know. They tried. You gotta give them credit, they sure tried. That's about all I can say. Got a captain comeback here. We've got the Horizon Captains versus the Endeavor Fencers. A truly inspiring story going on here. We've got a group of really big swords versus a bunch of little guys with small swords. And you know, it's not about the size of the sword, it's about how many people are there trying to swing at you. And you know, the Fencers, they simply outnumbered the captains, so what can you do? Next up, we've got the Xeno Hunter Candlemen versus the Reverie Poachers. You know, the Candlemen didn't stand much of a chance, but I gotta give them credit. At least they didn't die within the first 2 seconds like the Pikemen did, so at least there's that. The Queen is back. We've got the Sensation Pirate Queens versus the Glitchbot 2 Firework Archers. You know, the Firework Archers really looked like they had everything under the control. Looks like they were stalling the Pirate Queens. They couldn't get close. Until the Queens actually did get close, and then you realize the Archers had no plan whatsoever, and the Queens blew them all up immediately, so point goes to the Queens. We're going back to ancient times with this one. We've got the Sentinels of Light Spear Throwers and the Reaver 2 Protectors. In a way, this looks like a ancient history documentary. This is probably exactly how our ancestors used to fight. Spears, shields, bumping into each other. In a way, it's beautiful to see how we've evolved, but, you know, maybe it's actually not as beautiful as I thought. We've got quite the matchup here. We've got the Glitchpop Longships versus the Convex Snake Archers. Now, if you were to ask me, these longships were able to beat the mammoths. What should a bunch of snakes do, right? Apparently, it makes all the difference. Snakes are the true enemy of the boat. Who would have thought? Alright, making their first appearances, we've got the Ego Shield Bearers and the Emperor-clad Archers. You gotta feel bad for these archers. I'm sure they really thought they had this in the bag, except that their arrows did nothing, and the shields just came crashing down on them so quickly. It was terrible, and I would hate to be this last guy. Oh god. This should be a fun one. We've got the Daydream Squires and the Radiant Crisis Deadeyes. Look at how many there are. They outnumber them so quick. There's no way the Squires lose. Oh, that's why you don't bring a sword to a gunfight. Forsaken bundle coming back. We got the Forsaken Jousters and the Prelude to Chaos Headbutters. You know, when my teachers told me to use my head, I don't think this is exactly what they had in mind. However, it does seem to be quite effective. I mean, if I saw 100 people charging at me and they strictly only use their head to just beat me up, I mean, I'd be terrified. This crazy matchup coming up, we've got the Prism 2 Clubbers versus Tethered Realm Blunderbuss. You know, at this point, I was really starting to wonder if maybe I'd gone a little too far with this ranking of Valorant bundles idea. But honestly, seeing a bunch of men with clubs beat up on a man in a barrel, honestly, I think it was all worth it in the end. Coming up, we've got the Tigress Wheelbarrow and then the Wasteland Deathbringers. You know, the wheelbarrows, they didn't really do much, but they definitely win for best haircut of the entire tournament, which we weren't really keeping track of, but, you know, at least they get points for something. Not for winning, though, that's for sure. Alright, we've got the Araxes Lasso and the Undercity Harvesters. Normally, I try to stay out and try not to make it personal. However, I feel like if I was on the field, I would 100% have been able to do this by myself. These guys on these horses, they're terrible. Probably the worst players I've ever seen. Anyways, Harvesters win. Coming up, we've got the Origin Devout Gauntlets and the Reaver Blow Darts. I will say this about blow darts. You know, it's a really cool party trick, you know, kind of show off to your friends. Real classy stuff, but it doesn't come in handy when you're getting punched in the face. So the Devout Gauntlets win this one. Alright, our next matchup is the Doodlebud Musketeers and the Zero Fang Painters. The Painters, using their masterful strategy of dropping my frame rate, yet again have the advantage being that the Musketmen simply couldn't fire enough shots before they were overwhelmed. It was horrifying, but you know, someone had to defeat the Musketmen sometime. Coming up next, we got the Sovereign Dragons versus the Luna Brawlers. I'm sorry, Luna Bundle fans. There's no easy way to put this. They got cooked. It was bad. They got cooked. On a happier note, we got the Sentinels of Light 2 Vampires versus the No Limit Miners. I want you to picture this, okay? You're walking home after a long shift of working in the mines, and you're jumped by a group of vampires. I don't really know what I would do in that situation, so if you have any ideas, by all means let me know. However, it turns out brute force is not the answer, because the vampires unfortunately beat the miners. We got quite the matchup here. We've got the Mage Punk Harpooners and the Spectrum Jarls. Now, the Harpooner's strategy of pulling the enemy towards them actually did not work out in their favor this time, because the Jarls do a lot of damage when they're close. So really, the Harpooners were the tools of their own downfall this time, which honestly, probably for the best. Next up, we've got the Altitude Halflings and the Orion Balloon Archers. You know, at the end of the day, the Balloon Archers, they tried their best, but there were just so many halflings. They could never hope to get them all up in the sky in time. Even though there was a bunch of them floating, there was just as many of them piling on top of the archers, and the halflings win this round. Next up, we've got the Prism Cannons and the Chrono Void Shadow Walkers. So the Shadow Walkers' whole shtick is that they teleport behind the enemy to get an advantage, and needless to say, that was enough to defeat the cannons. Well, you can see that. We got a good one here. You've got Team Ace Thor and Neo Frontier Sacred Elephants. Two titans of this tournament so far, fighting it out. The elephants, they were flying around. Thor was smacking them, shooting it with lightning. It was a mess. The elephants were holding their own for a little bit, but eventually there was just nothing they could do. Thor is just too powerful. The elephants, unfortunately, as well as the Neo Frontier bundle, were out of the tournament. Coming up, we've got the Equilibrium Reaper, as well as the Snowfall Berserkers. At this point, I just want anyone to be able to defeat the Grim Reaper. I'll take anybody. And I figured, the Vikings should be able to do it, right? No, they couldn't. Grim Reaper moves on. Our next matchup is the Rush Catapults as well as the Avalanche Gunslingers. Now, the only reason the Catapult made it this far is because its other opponent was simply never able to get close. Well, what happens when your opponent doesn't have to get close? This. Gunslingers move on. Alright, the Questionable Knife Bundle guys are back, as well as the Mage-Punk Minotaurs. Let's see how this one goes. Definitely one of the closest matches we've had so far. The Minotaurs and the Sentinels had to go a few rounds because it was so neck and neck each time, but at the end of the day, the Minotaurs, using brute force, was able to punch past these enemy shields and was able to move on to the next round. Alright, well this one should be exciting. We've got the Reverie Poachers and the Endeavor Fencers. For the most part, the Poachers have been able to defeat their opponents very quickly on, but the Fencers actually gave them the challenge this time. The Fencers got up in the Poacher's face, was able to do some serious damage very quickly, and was able to secure the round before they lost most of their numbers. Meaning this was a Fencer victory. Moving forward, we've got the Sensation Pirate Queens and the Reaver 2 Protectors. The Protectors moved in fast, and they outnumbered the Pirate Queens like 5-1, and it seemed like everything was going well, except they forgot that the Queen had one thing that they didn't, bombs, and that made all the difference. Next round, we've got the Convex Snake Archers and the Ego Shield Bearers. So we saw how the Archers failed to beat the Shield Bearers last time, so maybe the Snake Archers will be able to do a little bit better this time, right? There's snakes involved. Maybe it didn't. There was no difference made. Yeah, they got crushed. But at least we got this cool shot of the Snake Archer on top of the shields. Next up, we've got the Prelude to Chaos Headbutters and the Radiant Crisis Deadeyes. So the Deadeyes are normally pretty good, however the Headbutters were simply too fast, they lunged at the Deadeyes way too quickly, and there was not enough time to beat them all, so the Headbutters cleared this really easily. Probably the most intense battle we've had so far. We've got the Wasteland Deathbringers and the Prism 2 Clubbers. So it started off with the Deathbringers, they were doing a lot of damage, but man pushes through, and you know what, no matter how scary death is, it's simply no match for a man with a stick. We're getting pretty close to the end, and we've got the Origin Devout Gauntlets and the Undercity Harvester. Within 2 seconds, half the Devout Gauntlets were gone. The Harvesters wiped out most of them, and then it was just clean up. The Harvesters destroyed these guys within seconds. It was way too easy for them. Coming up next, we've got the Sovereign Dragons and the Zero Fang Painters. Honestly, I think these painters might have a pretty good chance. Oh no. A small group was actually able to sneak by. Unfortunately, they were unable to stop this awesome kick. Next round, we've got the Sentinels of Light 2 Vampires and the Spectrum Jarls. Although the Vampires outnumbered the Jarls about 3-1, the Jarls are simply just too strong. They have such good crowd control, and all the Vampires were knocked down and stood no chance. Next up, we've got the Altitude Halflings and the Chrono Void Shadow Walkers. You see, the Shadow Walkers thought they were clever teleporting behind the Halflings. However, what they weren't prepared for was about 50 of them to just jump on top of them and start punching them. That's the secret with the Halflings. They might not be the strongest unit, but what they lack in strength, they make up for in numbers. And even with these last 2 survivor Shadow Walkers, there was a whole army approaching them that they never stood a chance defeating. We got a battle of 2 giants in this tourney. We got the Equilibrium Reaper, as well as the Team Ace Thor. Now, not to say that I wanted the Reapers to lose, however, I did at least want to see a challenge, and that's exactly what Thor did. Thor, he was punching the Reaper, and he made it look easy. The Reapers were defeated within seconds. Alright, we only got 10 more. We got the Mage Punk Minotaur and the Avalanche Gunslinger. The Gunslinger was raining down bullets, Minotaurs were flying everywhere, they were doing some serious damage, but it wasn't enough to keep the Minotaurs down. They were getting back up, they were throwing punches, throwing the Gunslingers around, and at the end of the day, the Minotaur had too much strength and the Gunslingers lost the round. Next round, we got the Sensation Pirate Queen and the Endeavor Fencer. The Fencers put up quite a fight. They charged at the Pirate Queens, they did their best, but the Pirate Queens crowd control with the bombs, it was just too much. The Fencers had fought nobly, but at the end of the day, they were no match for the Pirate Queens. Coming up, we've got the Prelude to Chaos Headbutters and the Ego Shield Bearers. You know, to the Headbutters' credit, they really did some serious damage. Considering that they were banging their heads against the shields, the fact that they made it as far as they did this round, it's really impressive. However, the Shield Bearers just barely edged out this round and carry on to the next. Next up, we've got the Prism 2 Clubbers and the Undercity Harvesters. Considering that the Clubbers outnumbered the Harvesters about 7-1, it was actually incredible to see how well the Harvesters held up their own. And, you know, the Clubbers, even though they only had a stick, they were really doing some serious damage. However, it turns out a stick with a pointy thing at the very end is better than just a normal stick. This one's kind of crazy. We got the Sovereign Dragons versus the Spectrum Jarls. A real song of ice and fire here. The dragons are a bit of a glass cannon, being that once you get past that initial fire blast, for the most part, they're useless. It's just a bunch of little guys holding the dragons up. So the Jarls, once they got past the fire, were very easily able to defeat the dragons. Next up, we've got the Team Ace Thors and the Altitude Halflings. You know, honestly, I'm starting to have a really good feeling about the... Oh no. Oh no. The Halflings were doing so well. What happened? Following that, we've got the Mage Punk Minotaur and the Sensation Pirate Queen. This match was no joke. The Minotaurs came out swinging, throwing themselves around. Pirate Queens, they were caught off guard. And for a quick minute there, it looked like the Minotaur had the upper ground. Except the Pirate Queen, being normally able to keep control of the situation with her bombs, she was able to take control, and it was able to defeat the last of the Minotaurs. Our next matchup, we've got the Undercity Harvesters and the Ego Shield Bearers. You know, the Shield Bearers, they really looked like they had this one in the bag. They were pushing down. There were so many of them, it honestly looked like it was in the bag. But the Harvesters, they never backed down. They didn't give up. They kept pushing through, and eventually they made it all the way, and they were able to defeat the Shield Bearers. Next up, we've got the Team Ace Thors and the Spectrum Jarls. Thor immediately came out swinging. Lightning from the sky, shot the Jarls straight up. Honestly, the Jarls never recovered from that. They were flung around like they were flinging, it was bad. Anyways, the Jarls got crushed. It was kind of sad. In our penultimate matchup, we've got the Undercity Harvesters and the Sensation Pirate Queens. Pirate Queens moved in fast. They took no time at all, dividing up the Harvesters and taking as much room as they could with their bombs, and they took full control of the situation. The Harvesters, unfortunately, didn't stand too much of a chance, meaning that the Pirate Queens, as well as Thor, would meet each other in the final round. Here it is, the final two. We've got Team Ace Thor versus Sensation Pirate Queen. To think that these were the last two bundles we'd see, I'm kinda sad. I cranked up the amount that we'd spend on each unit so we can have the largest battle, and as you can see, things were out of control. Lightning everywhere, explosions, bombs. It was out of control. Thor, it honestly looked like Thor had the upper hand for a while, and then the Pirate Queens. It was absolute madness. I couldn't tell what was happening, but then it happened. Within just a few minutes, the Pirate Queen had defeated the last of the Thors and made it that the Sensation bundle was officially the best Valorant bundle in the game. I'm just as disappointed as you are. If you got to the end of this video, I hope you enjoyed it. It was a bit of a mess, but, you know, I think it all worked out okay. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to subscribe, like it, you know, all the normal, you know what to do. Anyways, catch you later. Bye.